Hello and welcome to this video where we will look at putting in the walls to prevent our ball from falling off the play area. Now, to do the walls, we're just going to simply take another game object and basically just stretch out the cube. So go under 3D object, cube, and it will place a cube in our scene. And so we can sort of take a look at that. Now, notice here it's been pushed off to the side, basically based on where I've clicked. You can always reset the position. If you set reset here, it will reset it to 0, 0, 0. So that's kind of maybe where we want to start from. Now let's take this and just sort of stretch it out. So I think we'll just do the x-axis first. I think about 20 works out, and you can just see it fits right there. And I might just take from the view from the top. So I'm just going to click on this little guy right here, and that will give me a top view. And if I click on here, that's the 3D view. And then that's the flat view. And that really lets me see exactly where I'm placing it. Now, we've obviously gone, sort of horizontal there. So I want to move this one up to this position. And so that would be moving along the z-axis because we can see the z there. And I believe if I set that to 10, it basically does a pretty good job there. We can call this, I'm going to call this one wall, I'll call it, wall N, the north wall, I guess, sort of thing. I'm going to make another wall down here, and so it's easy to duplicate. Either I can right-click here and duplicate, and it put wall N1. I'm just going to change that to wall S for south, and instead of doing anything fancy there, I'm just going to simply take the Z and put it to -10. I can't quite see it there, but I've placed it there. I'm going to duplicate the wall another time and duplicate. And this one, now you've got sort of two choices here. You could either rotate it or, so you could use the rotation here. So I could do sort of like a 90-degree rotation. To me, that's okay, but I prefer actually to do this, where I'm just going to change this one to 1 and then come up here and make that 20. And so by doing that, and let's just move, so here we'll move back to 0, and then on this, on the x, I guess, we can set that to, well, we'll go do -10, I guess, to start with. And there it is, there. Now, this one's a little bit off. I think if I make that 19, and then 9.5 or something, just so it sort of fits there. 19, I think it brings it in. And actually, I'm going to make these guys Shift and Shift. I'm going to hold Shift twice just to fill it out nicely and make those 21. There. Okay, that's a nice looking wall. So basically what I've done is made this one 19 and it just sort of fits right in. And then those ones as 21 just to come over the edge. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this. I guess I'll rename it. That would be the west wall. And I'm going to make a east wall. And so right click again. Duplicate. And this one, because we had -10 here, I just simply change that to +10, and we're good. So now we've got our walls here. Now, because we didn't do anything with the height, they're sort of on the lower side. So if I play test it, we'll probably find it's fine, but it could, sort of jump over the edge there. It's just not very big. My movement is a little slow. Let me go back to my marble here. I'm going to bump that up to 10. I think it's just playing a little too slow for me. There we go. A little bit faster. So yeah, I mean, it's not bad, but I could imagine that it's pretty close to, sort of the top and close to going over. So I've got a couple of things I could do. One is I could select all of these. So I hold Shift, and I've got that. And then I could just sort of use the, where to go here? There we are, the Translate tool, and just drag it up a little bit, or based on this, maybe at 0.5, and then that way I've got the walls the whole way up. The other option could have been, again, selecting all of them, so either hold Control and select just like you would in a Windows environment, or click the first one, hold Shift, click the bottom one, and go select all 4. You could have changed the height, so the position, you could have changed the scale and made this, 3 or something like that, right? Just to make it a higher wall. But I think the way we've done it there, by keeping it at 1 and just raising it up, is probably ample, but you could go ahead and modify that. Now, let me just fix this a little bit here. So we want to make sure that that's E. There we go. So we've got all our walls, and we might as well give them a material as well, and then just organize them a little bit. So I'm going to create another material. So go into my materials folder. We did this before, so right click anywhere in here, create a material is about halfway down, and then again, color doesn't matter, so whatever color you prefer. I'm going to go for blue, and then we can just simply drag those on, and we've got that there. Okay, so those are your walls, all nicely colored. And then the organization aspect of it, these four, okay, it's good to have all four access to them, but, they are taking up some space here, and you can imagine that as we add more and more objects, eventually they would sort of, you'd be scrolling down, and we probably don't need to access each of these walls individually, and if we do, we could probably, take the time to go into sort of like a folder. Unfortunately, there's no folders here. So if you right click and you say, oh, create a folder, there's nothing there, but there is something called an empty. And an empty, if I create one, just as game object, and you'll notice that there's no components. It's basically nothing. So what I'll do is I'll call this the walls with an S to indicate the plural. And then one very important thing, if you're ever making an empty to contain things, make sure you reset the position to 0, 0, 0. That will prevent sort of like this offset from occurring. It's a little bit strange. If you don't set it to 0, 0, 0, then all the other values are, when we put them in, when we sort of make them this the parent and the other walls the children, the position is relative to the parent. And so things can get a little bit strange if this is not 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to reset that. The easiest way is just to come over here and reset. And so we can see now the parent is in the center, and we have these walls. And again, I'm going to hold Shift and top and bottom, sort of click those, and then drag the walls in there. And you can see that it's just like a menu or a folder system, right, where we can drop it down and then access those. But we sort of saved, instead of having 4 things, we've got 1 thing there, and we can always click in and access it. Good. So again, maybe just a quick double check that our walls are working well. And so, yep. Now you can see there's a little bit of an issue that the wall does maybe interfere a little bit with the view. You can always go back and, reduce the height or do something if you needed to, or increase the camera angle, I guess. But that should be pretty good for this lesson. So nothing too tricky. Each of these walls was a cube. Just as we're mentioning it, right? Obviously we did with the transform. We can see it also, just like the sphere and the plane, has a mesh renderer, and that allows us to view it. If you even get rid of it, and this could be something, right? When the ball gets to a certain point, you remove or you reduce the transparency of that wall so that you could actually see kind of through it. So even though I've removed the mesh renderer, the wall is still there. The collider is still there. And that's how that's separate, right? The box collider is a separate object. Now I could do the opposite. I could put the wall back in, the renderer of it, and then remove the collider. And just as you'd suspect, that ball will actually fall through. So even though there's a wall there, it passes straight through because there's no collider. Okay, so just keep those kind of ideas in mind as you're building your game. Good. So we'll leave it there, and we'll see you in the next video. Although, one thing I have failed to do the whole time is make sure that you save your game. So as you're working through here, it is a good idea to make sure you save your scene. Remember, we called our scene game here. We'll talk more about scenes later on. So File and Save, and then that little star disappears there. That way, we prevent us from losing all the hard work we've done. All right, we'll see you next video.